They say the most dangerous betrayals don't come from enemies, but from the ones who smile the warmest. My husband's best friend. I trusted him. Not casually, not from a distance. I trusted him like family. Like blood. He was always around. Always kind. Always helpful. At birthdays. Holidays. Late nights when my husband was working. He knew my routines, my moods, the sound of my laugh when it was real and when it was forced. He was there. And I didn't see it coming. Not at first. It started small. A joke that lingered. A glance that lasted a beat too long. A compliment I didn't know I needed, until I felt it fill something in me I hadn't even realized was empty. I used to think things like this happened all at once, fast, dramatic, like in the movies. But it didn't. It was slow. It was quiet. And that's what made it so dangerous. There wasn't a moment where I said, "This is wrong." There were 1,000 little moments where I didn't say anything at all. I was lonely. I didn't even know how lonely until someone finally looked at me like they saw me. Not the mother. Not the wife. Me. And when he looked at me like that, I didn't turn away. I should have. I wanted to. But I didn't. What he wanted from me, what I almost gave him, still keeps me awake at night. Because it wasn't about love. It wasn't even about desire. It was about being seen. Being wanted. Feeling alive again, if only for a second. And in that second, I almost ruined everything. I wish I could say I stopped it right away. That I was stronger. But I wasn't. I stood there, in that moment, closer to him than I should have ever been. And I felt my heart betray me before my body ever did. This is my truth. And maybe it's yours too. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold to uncover the hidden truths buried beneath seemingly perfect lives, because what happens next, you truly won't believe. I'm 42. Married for 16 years. To a man who, once upon a time, made me laugh so hard I cried. Who used to hold my hand in public like it was the most natural thing in the world. Who used to whisper that I was his whole world. But now? Now, Daniel comes home late. Eats in silence. Sleeps facing the other side of the bed. And in between all that silence, I started disappearing. We have a nice house, clean, well kept. 2 stories, beige walls, hardwood floors. But it's quiet. Too quiet. You could hear a pin drop most nights, even with the TV on. It's the kind of house where everything looks fine, but if you listen close, you can hear what's missing. Daniel's a good man. I'll say that. He doesn't cheat, he doesn't lie, he doesn't yell. But that's the thing. He doesn't do much of anything anymore, not with me. He pours everything into work. His phone buzzes more than his voice does. He shows up for meetings, not for dinners. He's married to his schedule. I'm just the leftover. I spend most days doing everything I'm supposed to do. Groceries, laundry, managing bills, cleaning, smiling, pretending I'm fine. Our kids are older now, busy with their own lives. They don't need me like they used to. And some days I wonder if anyone does. Then, there's Caleb. Daniel's best friend since college. They've known each other longer than I've even known Daniel. He was the best man at our wedding. The fun uncle to our kids. The guy who always brought wine and good conversation. Caleb's different. He's the kind of man who remembers things. Like how I take my coffee. Or what color I wore to last year's holiday dinner. He notices when I cut my hair, tells me it suits me. He says things like, "You're glowing today." And for a moment, I almost believe him. He makes me laugh. Not just a polite laugh. A real one. The kind that feels like air in lungs that forgot how to breathe. I didn't think anything of it at first. Why would I? He's Daniel's best friend. Practically family. And I was just being polite. Smiling. Laughing at his jokes. What harm was there in that? But then it became a habit. He'd stop by, just to say hi if Daniel wasn't home. Offer to fix something around the house. Stay a little longer after dinner. Help clean up even when I told him not to. Ask how I was really. And I'd talk. Because he listened. And God, when someone really listens, it's addictive. I started waiting for his visits without even realizing I was doing it. wearing the nicer top, putting on lipstick, just a hint, telling myself it was for me, that I wanted to feel good. But deep down, I knew exactly who I was hoping would notice. And he did. One afternoon, he brought over a book. Said he thought of me when he read it. A story about a woman trapped in a life that looked perfect on the outside, but was crumbling on the inside. He placed it gently in my hands and said, "You remind me of her. Not because you're sad, but because you're strong. But even strong women need someone to see them." That stayed with me. Long after he left. Long after I closed the door and leaned my back against it, heart thudding like I'd run a mile. I remember whispering to myself, this is harmless. He's just being nice. But even as I said it, a part of me already knew. Kindness can become something else when you're starving for it. When your own husband forgets your birthday, but his best friend shows up with your favorite cake. At the time, I thought it was harmless. A smile here, a compliment there. But I didn't realize how quickly kindness could turn into temptation. And by the time I did, it was already too late to pretend I hadn't felt something. Something dangerous. Something real. Something I wasn't ready to admit. But couldn't deny either. It was a Tuesday evening. One of those days where the sky turns gray early and the whole house feels colder than it should. Daniel had texted me around 5, working late. Don't wait up. Nothing new. I stared at that message for a few seconds before locking my phone and heading to the kitchen. That's when I noticed the sink again. Still leaking. Still dripping that slow, rhythmic drip that had been driving me quietly mad all week. I made a mental note, call a plumber. But before I could even finish the thought, there was a knock at the door. Caleb. He stood there holding a bag of takeout and a crooked smile. Figured you probably didn't feel like cooking tonight. I hesitated. Just for a second. But I smiled and stepped aside. You read my mind. We sat at the kitchen table, eating noodles out of cartons and talking about nothing in particular. Music played softly in the background, one of those old jazz playlists Daniel used to love but hadn't touched in years. The conversation flowed easily. It always did with Caleb. Until I made some offhand comment about the sink and how Daniel kept forgetting to call someone about it. Caleb stood up. Let me take a look. I told him it wasn't necessary. He insisted. He knelt under the cabinet, fiddling with something beneath the sink. I stood nearby, leaning against the counter, arms crossed, watching him work. He was saying something, I don't even remember what. Something about washers or bolts or God knows what. And then it happened. His hand brushed mine as he reached up to grab a towel. A simple touch, but it lingered. Just a second too long. And when our eyes met, something changed. He didn't look away. He didn't smile. He just looked at me, like he saw straight through every wall I'd built to survive the last few years. Like he knew exactly how empty I'd been feeling and wanted to fill that space. My throat tightened. I turned away, busying myself with absolutely nothing. He stood up slowly, drying his hands. And then, quietly, gently, he asked, "Are you happy?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. I said something like, of course. I mean, yeah. Why wouldn't I be? But my voice cracked halfway through. He didn't press. Didn't call me out. He just looked at me for a moment longer, too long, and said, "You deserve to be." That was it. No flirtation. No touch. Just those 5 words that felt like a whisper pressed against a wound I didn't even know was still bleeding. I nodded. Forced a smile. Thanked him again for the food. He said goodnight like he always did. Polite. Warm. Like nothing had happened. And maybe nothing had. Maybe it was all in my head. But when I closed the door behind him, I didn't walk away. I leaned against it. My chest was tight. My heart was racing. And I asked myself, why? Why was I standing there breathless, like something monumental had just happened? Why did his question feel like the first time in years someone had actually cared about the answer? That night, I told myself it was nothing. Just dinner. Just conversation. Just a friend being kind. But my body knew better. And deep down, so did I. That night after Caleb left, I lay in bed beside Daniel, staring at the ceiling. He was already asleep, face turned toward the wall, breathing steady, arms tucked close like he was trying to keep himself warm. Or maybe trying to keep me out. I reached for him once. Lightly touched his back, just my fingertips brushing against the fabric of his shirt. No reaction. It had been months since he touched me with any real affection. Not just physical, but the kind of touch that says, I see you. I still want you. I tried to remember the last time he'd looked at me the way Caleb did. The way a man looks at a woman, not out of habit or obligation, but with want, with wonder. And when I thought about it, I couldn't. 16 years together. And somewhere along the line, all the heat turned to routine. The long kisses became quick pecks. The conversations turned into reminders. Did you pay the gas bill? What time's the appointment? Even our fights had quieted. Not because we were at peace, but because we'd given up trying. The next morning, I was making coffee when my phone buzzed. A message from Caleb. Just checking in, hope you're smiling today. 7 words. And somehow they meant more than all the things Daniel hadn't said in months. I stared at it, heart fluttering like a teenager's. And then, like a reflex, I deleted it. But the moment it vanished, something inside me dropped. Like I'd thrown away something precious. Like I'd silenced a part of me that had just started to speak up. I told myself it was the right thing. That I didn't want to lead him on. That nothing had happened, nothing was happening. But all day, I kept glancing at my phone, hoping he'd text again. He didn't. And that's when the guilt started. This awful, creeping shame that coiled around my thoughts. I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't crossed a line. But my heart had, and that scared me. I started rationalizing, telling myself I just missed being seen. That it wasn't about Caleb. That it could have been anyone. That I was just human. I haven't done anything wrong, I kept saying. I just enjoy the attention. That's not a crime, right? But I knew better. It's not just what we do that changes us, it's what we want to do. And even wanting felt like a betrayal. Still, the next time I knew Caleb might stop by, I wore that soft blue blouse. The one that made my eyes look brighter. I even put on a little mascara. Told myself it was for me. That I just wanted to feel good in my skin again. That it had nothing to do with him. Right? But deep down, I felt the lie settle like a stone in my stomach. Because I wasn't dressing up for Daniel. He wouldn't have noticed anyway. And as much as I tried to ignore it, as much as I tried to push away the warmth I felt when I thought about Caleb, that warmth was still there. Quiet. Dangerous. And growing. Each time the doorbell rang, I found myself hoping it was him. Each time my phone buzzed, I held my breath. I was slipping. Not in some dramatic, scandalous way, but slowly, silently. Like a tide pulling me under before I even realized I was wet. And part of me didn't want to fight it. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. Wanted. Real. And that part of me, the part that had been starved for so long, was starting to hunger for more. It didn't stop with a text. In fact, it got quieter. More subtle. Caleb didn't flood my phone with messages. He didn't make some big declaration. He just showed up. More and more. At first, it was under the pretense of errands. Hey, I'm heading to the store, need anything? Thought I'd swing by. Daniel said he left a tool here last week. Little things that didn't feel like much on their own. But they started adding up. I'd hear his knock around noon. He'd have that easy smile on his face. And in his hand, lunch. Nothing fancy. Sandwiches. A salad. Takeout from a little Italian place I'd once mentioned in passing, probably a year ago. But he remembered. Just thought you might not have eaten yet, he said, setting the food down on the kitchen table like it was the most normal thing in the world. I told him he didn't have to do that. He said, I know. That's why I did. That kind of kindness. It slips past the usual defenses. We sat, talked, laughed. I found myself leaning in when he spoke. Laughing too easily. Tucking my hair behind my ear when his eyes lingered just a second longer than they should have. One moment, we were talking about something ridiculous. I don't even remember what. But I laughed hard. The kind of laugh that surprised me loud, real, free. And when I looked up, our eyes met. He wasn't laughing. He was just looking at me. Like I was the only person in the room. like I was the only person in the world. I felt my smile freeze. Something inside me twisted. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but then his hand reached up. Slowly, gently. He brushed a strand of hair from my face. His fingertips barely grazed my skin, but it felt like fire. I pulled away. Not harshly. Not because I was angry, but because I was scared of what would happen if I didn't. He stepped back, apologized softly, said something about getting back to work. And I let him go. Said nothing. Later that night, I stood in front of the mirror. Put on a new perfume I'd picked up weeks ago. Something floral and light. I wore it to bed. Daniel didn't notice. He was scrolling through emails. Didn't even look up when I got into bed. I lay there, eyes open, listening to the hum of the night, the dull glow of his screen reflecting on the wall. And all I could think about was Caleb's hand. The way he'd looked at me. I wanted to feel angry. At him. At myself. At Daniel. But all I felt was confused. Because somewhere along the line, the lines had blurred. And now I didn't know what was appropriate anymore. What was innocent? What was real? I should have told Caleb to stop. I should have told Daniel how I'd been feeling. I should have pulled the brakes before the train got moving. But I didn't. And then came the storm. It was the kind of rain that felt personal. Heavy. Relentless. The kind that slaps against the windows and drowns out everything else. Daniel had left that morning for a 3-day conference out of state. I remember standing in the doorway, watching him load his suitcase into the back of the car. He kissed me on the cheek, said, "Don't wait up," and drove off without looking back. By nightfall, the sky was a sheet of slate. Wind howled through the trees. And then, just as I was setting a mug of tea on the table, the power cut out. Everything went dark. The silence was immediate. Complete. I fumbled for candles. Lit them one by one until the room glowed with a soft, flickering warmth. The kind of glow that makes everything feel closer, more intimate. A few minutes later, just when I was settling into the couch, blanket over my legs, there was a knock at the door. Caleb. His hair was damp, curls clinging to his forehead, jacket soaked through. Heard about the outage. Just wanted to check on you. I should have said I was fine. I should have closed the door. But I didn't. I let him in. He stepped into the dim light, shaking off the rain, eyes scanning the room like he already knew what was about to happen. I poured wine. Red. Full-bodied. We sat on the couch, the candlelight casting soft shadows on the walls. For a while, we just talked. About the storm. About work. About nothing. And then, the quiet came. That kind of stillness that presses against your chest. That demands attention. Caleb turned to me, glass in hand. His voice barely above a whisper. "You know I've always cared about you, right?" I nodded, unsure where this was going. He looked down for a moment, swirled the wine in his glass, then met my eyes again. "No, I mean, really cared. Long before any of this. Long before you started looking at me differently." My breath caught. He kept talking. Told me how he used to watch Daniel pull away from me, little by little. How he wanted to step in, wanted to say something, but didn't know how. How he hated himself for loving someone he wasn't supposed to love. "But I can't help it anymore," he said. He set his glass down. Moved closer. And then, he leaned in. His hand rested gently on my knee, warm and steady. His face inches from mine. I didn't move. I didn't speak. And I didn't stop him. Not right away. The moment felt suspended. Like the universe was holding its breath. I could feel the heat of his skin. The quiet plea in his eyes. And then, a loud, sudden crash of thunder split through the sky. The house shook. And so did I. The moment snapped. I pulled away, breath ragged, chest tight. Caleb blinked, stunned. "You feel it too," he said. "Don't deny it." I looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time, I saw not the fantasy, but the risk. The wreckage that would follow. My voice trembled. "You need to leave. Now." He stared at me for a second longer. Something behind his eyes cracked. But he didn't argue. He stood, gathered his things, and walked out into the rain. I didn't move for a long time. Just sat there, the candlelight flickering, heart pounding in my ears, tears I didn't realize I was holding finally spilling down my cheeks. And in the silence that followed, I didn't know what scared me more. That I almost let him kiss me. Or that I wanted him to. The rain stopped sometime before dawn, but inside me, the storm hadn't passed. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, curled under the blanket, staring at the candle wax dried on the coffee table. The silence was too loud. My thoughts, even louder. I told myself I did the right thing. I knew I did. I'd said no. I'd stopped it. I'd closed the door. But then, why did I feel like something inside me had been ripped away? The next day, Caleb didn't text. The day after that, nothing. A full week passed. Not a single call, no casual drop-ins, no check-ins masked as errands. He disappeared. Completely. And in that emptiness, I realized just how far I had fallen. I didn't miss the thrill, or the tension, or the fantasy. I missed him. His voice. His presence. His eyes that always noticed the small things Daniel never did. I didn't realize how much space he had taken up in my life until he was gone. Daniel came back from his trip that Sunday night. He walked in, kissed the top of my head, asked if the power had come back on. I said yes. He asked if I'd slept okay. I lied. He looked at me, brow furrowed just slightly. You seem off. You okay? I nodded. Just tired. Probably stress. He accepted that without question. And just like that, we slipped back into our quiet routine. But something was different now. Not between Daniel and me, but inside me. I avoided mirrors. Didn't wear makeup. Didn't dress up, even when I had the chance. I couldn't look at myself without hearing Caleb's voice. You feel it too. Don't deny it. I saw that moment over and over again. His hand on my knee. His breath against my skin. The way I didn't flinch. Didn't stop him. Only pulled away when the world forced me to. And then came the dinner party. Daniel's coworkers. A small gathering at our house. I didn't want to host. I didn't want to smile or pour drinks or make small talk. But I did. Because that's what I do. An hour in, I heard the front door open. Daniel called out over the music, "Caleb's here." My stomach turned. And then I saw him. Walking in, dressed in a navy sweater and dark jeans, like nothing had changed. Except, he wasn't alone. A woman followed behind him. Tall, blonde, confident smile. He introduced her as Claire. Said they'd met through work. He looked at me once. Briefly, politely, then moved on. The rest of the night was a blur. I poured wine with a frozen smile. Laughed at jokes I didn't hear. Answered questions I didn't understand. All while watching him from across the room. Watching how he leaned into Claire's ear when he spoke. How she laughed like she'd known him forever. How his hand rested gently on the small of her back. Like mine never had. And it hit me. I was jealous. Crushed by a weight I didn't expect. Not because he was with someone else. But because he acted like we had never happened. Like that stormy night had been washed away completely. I went to the bathroom just to breathe. Closed the door. Sat on the edge of the tub. My chest hurt. Tears welled up and refused to fall. And I thought to myself, why? Why did it hurt to see him with someone else when I was the one who said no? After everyone left that night, I went through the motions. Cleared glasses. Wiped countertops. Loaded the dishwasher. Daniel sat on the couch, watching something on TV, chuckling softly, like nothing in the world had changed. Like the man who once nearly kissed his wife hadn't just walked out of our home, with another woman on his arm. I kept thinking about that moment, when our eyes met across the room. The polite nod Caleb gave me. The complete absence of weight behind it. As if we were strangers. As if none of it ever happened. Later that night, when the house was quiet again, I stood at the bedroom doorway, watching Daniel sleep. His chest rose and fell in a rhythm that used to comfort me. Now, all I could feel was a strange, aching emptiness. I loved him. I still do. But I couldn't help but wonder, does he love me? Or just the idea of who I used to be? The woman who always smiled. Who held everything together. Who never asked for too much. What if I left tomorrow? Packed a small bag. Walked out. Would he fight for me? Would he even notice right away? Or would he just assume I needed space? Another word we use to avoid the truth. And then there's Caleb. Was he wrong? Was he the villain here? Or did he just show me what I've been missing for far too long? He made me feel something. Alive, desired, seen. And yet, I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't go looking for it. But I also didn't walk away when I should have. So what does that make me? Am I innocent just because I never crossed the final line? Or am I guilty because in my heart I already had? I think about the way Caleb touched my hair. The way my body didn't recoil but leaned in. The way my chest ached when he looked at Claire like she was his and not someone standing in for what he really wanted. I think about all of it. And I feel shame. Real, hollow shame. Because good women don't entertain temptation. Good wives don't fantasize about someone else's touch. Good people don't ache for something they already promised to someone else. And yet, I did. What kind of woman even considers this? I've spent days trying to untangle the guilt from the longing. Trying to figure out if what I wanted was really him. Or if it was just a way to fill the void Daniel had quietly left behind. Maybe it was both. Maybe it was neither. The worst part? There's a version of me quiet, buried deep, who still wonders. What if I hadn't stopped him? What would have happened next? Would I have hated myself more? Or would I have finally felt something I hadn't felt in years? And that's the part one can't answer. The part one may never say out loud. But it lives there now. Inside me. Always. Have you ever felt something for someone you weren't supposed to? Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone who wasn't yours and still felt home? I'm not proud of the way my heart wandered. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't happen. And I'd be lying if I said it didn't leave a mark. I don't know what the rules are anymore, what counts as betrayal, what counts as survival. All I know is that I was hurting. And for a moment, someone else saw that pain and reached for it. What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have pulled away? Would you have let it happen? Would you have told the truth or buried it like I did? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. Because right now, I need to know I'm not the only one. I need to believe that someone out there understands how hard it is to do the right thing when your heart is starving. Your words might help someone else who's standing on the edge right now, just like I was. And if stories like this speak to something inside you, if they make you feel seen, even just a little, subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold and hit that bell. We tell the stories most people are too afraid to say out loud. The ones you only whisper in the dark. The ones that make you feel less alone. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Temptation doesn't always come with warning signs. It doesn't scream or flash or stomp through the front door. Sometimes it arrives quietly, with a smile, a kind word, a hand that reaches out when the one you needed most pulled away. I almost ruined everything. Not because I stopped loving my husband, but because I stopped loving myself enough to believe I deserved more than crumbs. I thought I was strong, but loneliness has a way of finding cracks in even the strongest hearts. And silence. Silence is a dangerous thing, because when you bury your pain deep enough, it doesn't disappear. It grows roots. And when it finally breaks through the surface, it doesn't come gently. It comes like a storm. If you're lonely, speak up. If you're hurting, don't wait for someone else to notice. Don't let silence be the thing that destroys you. This was my story, but maybe it's yours too. And if it is, please know you're not broken. You're human. And sometimes, being human is the hardest thing of all.